We're going into our next story, and this one is about Joe Biden. If you have not heard, this was announced just like a day or so ago. Joe Biden has made the horrible, horrible decision to send cluster bombs to Ukraine. Now, why is this an issue? Some of you may be wondering, what is a cluster bomb? Let's go ahead and get into that first. What is the cluster bomb? The controversial weapon the U.S. is sending to Ukraine. Let's get into this part. What is a cluster bomb? A cluster bomb is a type of weapon that is designed to disperse smaller bombs over a large area. They are also known as cluster munitions, with smaller bombs referred to as submunitions or bomblets. In other words, it is not a bomb that can actually target one specific spot. The problem why this is so incredibly dangerous, obviously, if it cannot target one specific spot, that means it spreads, right? So there are going to be casualties with cluster bombs, civilian casualties, more civilian casualties, because of the type of bomb that it is. So why would Joe Biden choose to send something like this to Ukraine? Well, part of it has to do with the fact that I feel that they are becoming very desperate. I feel that they realize, and they're not telling you this, but I will, they realize that Ukraine is not winning this war with Russia. You have to remember that Russia also has a powerful friend next door to them called China. And if they need to knock on that door, they can knock on that door. They have a relationship. They're a part of BRICS. So this is an act of desperation because, you know, it looks some kind of way after you sent all that billions of dollars over there and then you're losing. Look some type of way. So they're choosing to send those to hopefully swing things in the other direction. Now, Joe Biden had an interview recently about this particular issue, and I want to show you his response in reference to that. Like, this is just terrible.
It was a very difficult decision on my part. And by the way, I discussed this with our allies, discussed this with our friends up on the Hill. And we're in a situation where Ukraine continues to be brutally attacked across the board by munitions, by these cluster munitions that have dud rates that are very, very low, I mean, very high, that are a danger to civilians, number one. Number two, the Ukrainians are running out of ammunition. And so what I finally did, took the recommendation of the Defense Department to, not permanently, but to allow for, in this transition period where we get more 155 weapons, these shells for the Ukrainians, to provide them with something that has a very low dud rate. And it's not used in civilian areas. They're trying to get through those trenches and then stop those tanks from rolling. And so, but it was not an easy decision, and we're not signatories to that agreement, but it took me a while to be convinced to do it. But the main thing is they either have the weapons to stop the Russians now keep them from stopping the Ukrainian offensive through these areas, or they don't, and I think they needed them.
I'm going to find a way to say this the best way possible. I'm not sure that I believe that the allies are actually okay with this, as he mentioned in that video. I'm not sure I really believe that. And for him to say, well, the defense pushed him to do this, so to speak, you're the president. Say no. The problem is that cluster bombs are considered to be a war crime. And in fact, it was actually Jen Psaki herself who confirmed that when it was mentioned that these were being used by Russia. Now, there's a clip here of Tulsi Gabbard on Fox News, and they address just that. There's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to the Democratic Party. And this is why I continue to push this type of message that people have to understand. They're not better than anybody else. The same people that they criticize, the same people that they point fingers towards, the same way they condemn people like Putin and Russia and all that, they're not any better. When the US government does it, it seems to be okay. Let's get into this clip here and you'll see what I mean.
Tulsi, and I want to get your take on what's happening now in Ukraine, because the Biden administration has announced they're sending cluster bombs to Ukraine. The move's highly controversial. In fact, Biden's own White House once said that using these kinds of bombs would be considered a war crime. Watch.
There are reports of illegal cluster bombs and vacuum bombs being used by the Russians. If that's true, what is the next step of this administration? And is there a red line for how much violence will be tolerated against civilians in this manner that's illegal and potentially a war crime?
It would be. I don't have any confirmation of that. We have seen the reports. If that were true, it would potentially be a war crime.
I hope everyone heard that loud and clear. It's illegal and it is essentially a war crime. That is coming from the former press secretary herself, Jen Psaki. They had a problem with it then because it was supposedly Russia doing it. But now it seems to be okay for the US government to do it. And more people need to call this out. And by the way, it's not just me. It's not just Tulsi Gabbard. Even Barbara Lee is calling this out. There's other Democrat politicians who are calling out Biden's decision to do this. Let's go on.
So it was a war crime for Vladimir Putin, but it's okay for us to send it to the Ukrainians in escalation.
This is exactly what I'm talking about, Pete. Their hypocrisy of rules that apply to others, but not for them, making decisions based on their own selfish desire for more power, their political interests. The cold callousness of this decision by the Biden administration today reminds me of what then Secretary of State Madeleine Albright said when she was asked about whether the price was worth it when the U.S. sanctions against Iraq killed over 500,000 children. And her response was, yes, we think the price was worth it. They're willing to do whatever it takes to get what they want, believing that the end justifies the means, even though this decision today all but guarantees that for decades to come, American-made cluster bombs will be the cause of Ukrainian casualties and children losing limbs long after this Russia-Ukraine war has finished.
So these cluster bombs are not just going to obviously hurt civilians in Russia. Remember, like I said, they don't align with a simple target. It spreads out, so it disperses. So that means that other people are going to be hurt and are going to be affected. So what you have to understand is that also means that there are going to be casualties of Ukrainian civilians as well. Now, I'm sorry, but if Zelensky cares as much about his people as he says that he does, he would try to limit or prevent any civilian casualties that he could, especially if it's coming from his own army. If Joe Biden and the rest of the US government cared about Ukrainian lives as much as they claim that they do, they would not send cluster bombs to Ukraine because they know that that could also hurt civilian Ukrainians. And I am pointing this out to you because of this. I'm pointing this out to you to show you that it's not about the people. It's not about saving those people. It's not about helping those people. This is about supporting the military-industrial complex. And this is about a possible regime change in Russia to remove someone like Vladimir Putin. Now, Vladimir Putin is not a saint. Vladimir Putin has his issues as well. But the United States government should not participate in any of these regime changes the same as it has been doing in the past. This has been a big issue. And that's what this is about. And I think this is a cover for it. By the time that this is all over, how many people in Ukraine are going to be left? How many of the civilians, the kids, the women and the children that they claim they care so much about, how many of them are going to be left not injured or not killed? But it doesn't matter to Zelensky because BlackRock came in, so it's more money. Where is all this money going? All the billions that went over there, and I'm supposed to sit here and believe they're like, oh, well, he said they're running out of ammunition. That's all done. Really? How much more? How much more? If this country is destroyed, where are the remaining people supposed to go? It's all about money, all about money. And the US government trying to once again police the world and exert its power. That's what this is about. Monique said it's only a war crime when countries we don't like do it. Bingo. Bingo. Lana says, why not peace? Why not peace? Because peace is not profitable. This is a huge issue, you guys. A huge issue. And what was interesting to me, I lost the tweet I had with Barbara Lee. I don't know what happened to her, but what was really interesting to me is that Barbara Lee to say, I don't agree with this. This is dangerous. Da 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 da. You didn't think it was dangerous when all you guys kept voting for, yeah, just keep sending the money, keep sending the weapons over to Ukraine. You didn't think that was dangerous. You guys didn't think it was dangerous to give these weapons to people, to the Azov battalion, to Nazis over there in Ukraine, and then some of the weapons have ended up in Africa? You weren't worried about it then. But now all of a sudden, oh no, this is a bridge just a little too far. It's a mess. Most of the politicians in DC are totally fine with war. Thank you for the super chat, Black Thoughts. Let us virtue signal to the last Ukrainian. Right, how many of these people are going to be alive when this is all over? Don't be surprised if they're trying to make this into another Afghanistan. Don't be surprised.